Hi, this is Stephanie Miller from The Stephanie Miller Show. Please enjoy this exclusive clip from my show on Political Voices Network.
Yes.
Scooby-Dooby-Doo.
I should tell Matt Gates, don't end a sentence with a preposition.
Oh, pardon me.
And don't Venmo underage girls.
What, John? Okay. I asked you, as I tend to do, I ask an existential question right before a hard break about suicide.
That was great.
But it was the highest on record last year. And I know we talked after Sinead O'Connor. And
who we don't know yet. We don't know what took Sinead from us.
Yeah. I mean, she was obviously, her last post was about her son who had committed suicide. But I mean... I don't, John, you talk more about like spiritual stuff than we do. Where do you think that is coming from or what's happening?
The fact that we don't have universal health care like every other developed nation. That's where it's coming from. The fact that there's no, let's not even talk about the stigma that so many people have, especially so many men, towards reaching out for help when they're in pain. The fact that it's not accessible for so many of us. My brother Paul runs a nonprofit for low-income folks to be able to do Zoom sessions with therapists. But generally speaking, the same people who want to use mental health as a way to draw attention away from gun violence. I'm like, no, let's stay with it because they are all connected. And obviously, this is only a year after 988 came out. And there's a new resource, but. We deserve to have a society where citizens can go and get help because this doesn't have to be this way.
We've talked about Trump and cults before, but we were just talking to Dean about this guy that obviously wanted to die for Trump. I don't. Yeah, the guy that was just shot by the FBI. I don't know how many of those people are, but you're like, oh my dear Jesus, what is happening?
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
That you would want to die for Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cult of weak white men.
Yeah.
And weak white men get easily threatened and easily triggered, and it's tragic and it's violent, and I don't know what's going to happen. I don't want to. I know that under the 14th Amendment, he's already not eligible. Yeah. He's not. But if you took him off the ballot, the amount of violence we would see, I think the only way it's going to resolve peacefully with Trump is to keep on keeping on and let him become more and more of this flop sweat drenched sack of cottage cheese melting down like an ice cream cone at Chernobyl on a hot day. Donald Trump is losing it. And if you think he's losing it now, wait till he has 2 trials the month of Super Tuesday. It's not going to get better for him. Folks, stop and smell the train wreck.
Yeah.
Donald Trump's meltdown is keeping me from needing a suicide hotline.
I'm enjoying every second of his humiliation.
Yeah, this is the prison where he's in jail now.
This is 2 conservative law professors you're referring to who argue that Trump is ineligible to serve.
Federalist Society.
Yes, Federalist Society law constitutional scholars who said this is the section that prohibits anyone who's engaged in insurrection from holding office. They said when we started out, neither of us was sure what the answer was. They engaged in research to settle an important constitutional question. The answer, they said, Donald Trump cannot be president, cannot run for president, cannot become president, cannot hold office unless 2/3 of Congress decides to grant him amnesty for his conduct on January 6th. So the events surrounding efforts to overturn the result of the presidential election of 2020 have sparked renewed scholarly, judicial, and political interest in Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. This was undoubtedly a serious assault on the American constitutional order. Not since the Civil War has there been so serious a threat to the foundations of the American constitutional republic. They conclude Section 3 is legally self-executing, and its disqualification where triggered just is. The bottom line is that Donald Trump both engaged in insurrection or rebellion, gave aid or comfort to others engaging in such conduct within the original meaning of those terms employed in Section 3 of the 14th Amendment.
He's already disqualified from even having a campaign for president. And CREW, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, they already filed a lawsuit for one official, I think from Texas, I might be wrong, who would boasted about his role in January 6th, and that guy was banned from ever running for office again. CREW will be filing a lawsuit here. I don't necessarily think this is a good idea because it'll be seen as being Joe Biden is stopping Donald Trump, and we, the people, get to vote for who we want.
Really? Do you think he'll be whiny about it?
I think
that would be so new. Okay. We are owed, I think. It has been a year, Jody. We are owed not just indictments. We are owed imprisonment. You tweeted, the first time I met Robbie Robertson was at the old VH1 studios in New York City. I was an 80s kid who loved his solo stuff first and then discovered the band later, a fact he couldn't believe. I could tell you stories about him all day, but you should listen to the music, read his book. It's very rare to admire an artist as much as I did him, then meet that person and be even more impressed in person. Thank you, Robbie, for making the world better. That reminds me of Carol Burnett.
There's
when they say never meet your heroes, I'm like, no, that's not true. I met my hero.
No, sometimes, there's a few heroes you meet. I mean, McCartney, Carol, and they don't disappoint you. And then I could tell you all day about
Lily
the ones I
Tomlin,
met.
obviously.
Lily?
Yeah. I mean, but talk about him a little bit because this one was personal.
I was a kid in the '80s and I didn't know anything about the band. We didn't have internet. And this album came out.
Older siblings.
Daniel Lanois had just produced U2 and Peter Gabriel's biggest albums, and then suddenly here's this guy I've never heard of with this deep, gravelly voice, and U2 is his backup band on 2 of these tracks, and Peter Gabriel sings backup on other songs, and Lanois produced it. And the album's called Robbie Robertson. Martin Scorsese directed all the videos. It was this incredibly creative pop rock album that still sounds like nothing you've ever heard. And so I was a fan of the solo stuff first. He followed that up with Storyville, which is an even better record.
Right. Yeah.
And then he did these 2 incredible albums. The first was a soundtrack to a TBS documentary called Music for the Native Americans. Guys, everyone listening, spend your weekend listening to the album Music for the Native Americans. It is like going to church 10 times. It's one of the most beautiful records you'll ever hear, with rock music in it. But Robbie grew up on a reserve in Canada. His mother was First Nations. His dad was Jewish. And he brought rock and even electronica to indigenous artists and indigenous music and did some really great things. Then I discovered the band. Then I were like, you wrote The Wait. Oh my God, you wrote The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down. And then you listen to Blonde on Blonde by Bob Dylan, or the 1966 tour where they're being booed for going electric. And that's Robbie playing lead guitar for all of those tracks as well. And he hated touring. I spent years begging him to tour. I did the first time he ever went on the internet was the first time I ever went on the internet, in a chat that I hosted in Santa Monica back in like '98. And then he brought me upstairs to
a text chat. It wasn't even
a text chat. Yeah. And then he brought me upstairs to his private studio where we recorded stuff, and he was just a pal. And he did my show many times over the years. Tonight on Sirius XM, in our third hour of our show, we're going to repeat our 2019 town hall we did with a live audience, because he had the soundtrack to The Irishman and his film that Ron Howard and Martin Scorsese produced called Once We're Brothers, where he tells his side of why the band broke up. And just he was an actor.
Yeah.
He starred in Carney. He was in The Crossing Guard with Nicholson.
Right.
And
I just watched The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down yesterday and sent it to friends. But now I'm thinking someone needs to put the Bama beat down to that now.
Well, everyone needs to watch The Last Waltz and Once We're Brothers. And just a great artist and and maybe the sexiest man I've ever met.
Oh, come on. That's you. Come on now. Come on, the sexiest man alive is calling someone else?
No, seriously. Okay. I mean, just a tremendously charismatic guy, just like Chris Lavoie.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Magnetic. Okay, hang on. What is
Not as
going
ripped.
on?
Not as ripped.
My phone system taunts me.
No, it's being weird. We should restart it.
But you know what? This year, can I just say?
Yes.
David Crosby and Tina Turner and Tony Bennett. And the guy from De La Soul, and Sinead O'Connor, and now Robbie. It's like this is like 2016 all over.
And comedy. I was saying Pee Wee Herman. The last time I saw him was at Judy Tenuta's funeral. I'm like, this year is just
This year's like 2016, which was the worst.
Yeah.
I mean, 2016 was so bad it took Abe Vigoda from us.
Yes. And I'm a pescatarian. What? See, that was a fish joke. Wasn't he in Fish?
He was fish.
He was fish.
Jeff.
He was fish.
John.
But see, the problem is remembering fish. That's the problem. If you,
That ran for like half a season.
Denise.
Okay.
My favorite Barney Miller spinoff.
Okay, good.
Someone tweeted, they said...
JoJo never made it to series.
They're starting to post things like, if you were a kid in the 70s, you know what this is, and it's the little partridge's old friend. Like, I know what that is. Okay.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, if you were a kid in the 70s, you know what this is, and it's a labor
oldies.
union. Nothing.
Yes. You retweeted a professor who said what we're seeing in Maui is a compound climate catastrophe where an immediate factor, in this case, unusually strong winds from the outer bands of a passing hurricane, interact with background state extreme drought that has been in place for a month. It really does look like some apocalyptic movie about climate change. People fleeing into the ocean to get away from the flames, and it's just and it's Jody partially grew up there, so it's.
I was there 2 years ago today doing my show. We went to Maui for 2 weeks, and I secretly did my show there and didn't tell anyone I was sort of on vacation. It's the most beautiful place I've ever been, and it is a double whammy. It's both the extreme heat from climate change that made the island a tinderbox, and then you combine the winds from the outside hurricanes, and it's like two different fronts of extreme weather from climate change meeting in the least likely place for this kind of devastation. People running into the ocean to escape the flames. Just unimaginable.
Yeah, absolutely. Tristan Snell, our friend, our buddy, our pal, our legal lad, said, breaking, Tommy Tuberville is not an Alabama resident. Tuberville lives in Florida, actually. He does not own any property in Alabama, just like Josh Hawley lives in Virginia, not Missouri. And Mark Meadows faked a residence in North Carolina. Liars and cheaters, all of them.
Yep.
Oh,
It's to a person almost. It's amazing.
If there's one thing conservative voters can't stand, it's Republicans who just tell them what they want to hear and lie to them. That's
Did
they
you hear
can't
what
stand
Trump said the other day? I'd really rather be anywhere else but this country, France. I could be anywhere
be in
enjoying.
the south of France, yeah.
Can you if any Democrat said that?
Yeah.
First of all, he roots against
Barack Obama
and
said it.
heckles the United States women's soccer team, and then he's like, "I'd rather be anywhere but this country." So would we. Oh God.
Soccer team thing was insane.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount
What a
these
D.
amoral
Nice
incels.
shot, Megan.
Franklin Graham as well. I mean, not just rooting against America, but why? Why? They still have this lie that she stomped out a flag, which is just outrageously false, but they don't care. George Harrison said it. As long as you hate, there will be people to hate, and they want to hate. And Trump tells them where to channel it, and that's why they love him.
Yeah.